The rain in New York doesn't just fall, it slashes against the glass of the skyscrapers like 1,000 tiny silver blades. From the 65th floor of the Vance Financial Tower, the yellow cabs crawling below looked like a slow-moving river of molten gold. I sat at my mahogany desk, the amber liquid of a single malt scotch swirling gently in my lowball glass. Across the room, my wife, Emily, was laughing. It was that laugh, the light, musical, perfectly practiced sound that had captivated me a decade ago when she was just an ambitious, small-town girl trying to make it in Manhattan. Now she wore a 4-carat diamond on her finger, a Chanel couture dress, and the effortless air of a woman who owned the world. Or rather, a woman who thought she was about to steal it. "Marcus, darling, you're missing the party," she said, stepping into my office. Her heels clicked sharply against the Italian marble floor. She leaned over my desk, smelling of jasmine and expensive privilege. She placed a gentle, manicured hand over mine. "Everyone is downstairs waiting to toast to our 10th anniversary. 10 years. Can you believe it?" "Time flies when you're building an empire, Emily," I replied, my voice smooth, masking the absolute void of emotion inside me. "It does," she purred, her eyes flashing with something hungry. She reached into her satin clutch and pulled out a sleek folder, sliding it across the desk toward me. "Speaking of the empire, I was hoping we could finalize this before the press arrives. It's the authorization deed for the Vanguard Fund. If you sign it over to my management tonight, we can announce it at the gala. It would be such a powerful statement, Marcus, a testament to our partnership." The Vanguard Fund. It was our firm's largest, most prestigious offshore investment vehicle, holding over $30 million in liquid assets. "A powerful statement indeed," I murmured, picking up my Montblanc pen. I looked at Emily. To anyone else, she looked like a doting, supportive wife. But as I leaned back, my iPad buzzed silently in my half-open drawer. A notification popped up on the mirrored screen, reflecting a cloned sync of her private messaging app. From Emily to Julian, marketing director. "He's holding the pen right now. I'm about to secure the last of the Vanguard shares. Next week, we fly to Zurich and leave the old man with nothing but his debts. Prepare the offshore transfer." My hand didn't shake. My heart didn't race. When you spend 30 years in the cutthroat world of high finance, you learn that anger is a luxury that costs too much. You don't get mad, you get even. "Are you sure you're ready for this level of responsibility, sweetheart?" I asked, looking up into her beautiful, treacherous eyes. "The Vanguard Fund is volatile. It requires an immense amount of oversight." "I learned from the best, didn't I?" She smiled, leaning down to press a soft kiss against my cheek. It felt like the kiss of a Judas. "Trust me, Marcus. I know exactly what to do with it." "I'm sure you do," I said. I lowered the pen and signed my name on the dotted line. The ink was rich, black and permanent. I stamped it with my personal seal and handed the document back to her. Emily virtually snatched it, a micro-expression of pure, unadulterated triumph breaking through her mask before she quickly suppressed it. She held the folder to her chest like a shield. "Thank you, Marcus. You won't regret this. Now, let's go downstairs. Our guests are waiting." "Go ahead." I smiled warmly, the perfect picture of a doting, aging husband. "I need to make one quick phone call to the compliance team to ensure the transfer protocol is initiated immediately. I'll join you in 5 minutes. "Don't be long," she winked, turning on her heel and sweeping out of the office, her dress whispering against the floor. The moment the heavy oak door clicked shut, the smile vanished from my face. The warmth in the room evaporated, leaving only the cold reality of the trap. I pulled my phone from my pocket and dialed a secure, unlisted number. It rang once. "Vance," a gravelly voice answered on the other end. It was Agent Reynolds, head of the FBI's Financial Crimes Division in New York. "The bird has taken the bait, Reynolds," I said calmly, looking out at the rain-soaked city. "She just took full administrative control of the Vanguard Fund. She and Julian will initiate the transfer to their shell corporation within the hour. Tell your team to get into position." "Are you sure about this, Marcus?" Reynolds asked, his tone heavy. "Once we cross this line, there's no protecting her. It's federal treason and grand larceny on an international scale. She's your wife." "She was my wife," I corrected him, taking a slow sip of my scotch. "Tonight, she's just another criminal catching herself in a net. Secure the perimeter of the ballroom. Let them have their dance." I hung up, adjusted my tuxedo tie in the mirror, and walked out into the hallway. The game was officially afoot, and Emily had no idea she had just signed her own arrest warrant. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was a sea of crystal chandeliers, flowing champagne, and the muted chatter of New York's elite. Hundreds of guest senators, hedge fund managers, and old money socialites had gathered to celebrate a decade of what the media called the golden marriage of Wall Street. As I descended the winding marble staircase, the crowd parted, offering nods of respect. I smiled, shook hands, and accepted their empty congratulations. My eyes were fixed on the center of the room. There she was. Emily was standing near the ice sculpture, laughing at something Julian, our marketing director, had just said. Julian was 32, tall, with sharp European features and a smile that he used like a weapon. He was wearing a tailored Tom Ford tuxedo ironically bought with the Christmas bonus I had given him last year. To the untrained eye, they were just two attractive colleagues discussing business. But I noticed the details. The way Julian's hand hovered a fraction of an inch too close to the small of Emily's back. The way Emily's eyes lingered on his lips when she took a sip of her champagne. They thought they were ghosts, invisible in plain sight. They didn't know I had been watching them for 6 months. Marcus! There he is, the man of the hour. Julian spotted me and raised his glass, stepping forward with an air of smooth confidence. We were just talking about your legendary streak. 10 years of marriage and 10 years of record-breaking quarters for Vance Financial. You truly have it all. Nobody has it all, Julian, I said, stepping into their circle. I offered him a firm handshake, feeling the slight tremor of adrenaline in his palm. There is always a price to pay for success. Some people just don't realize the bill is due until it's too late. Julian's smile faltered for a microsecond before smoothing out. Deep as always, sir. Emily stepped in, placing her hand on my chest, her diamond catch the light. Darling, the press is setting up by the podium. We should do the toast and announce the Vanguard transfer now. The photographers are dying for a shot. Of course, I said, patting her hand. Let's not keep them waiting. We walked up to the raised podium. The chatter in the room died down as the master of ceremonies tapped his microphone. Flashbulbs began to pop, blinding and relentless. Emily stood proudly at my left, holding the leather folder containing the signed deed like a trophy. Julian stood just off stage, his eyes glued to his smartphone. I knew exactly what Julian was doing. He wasn't checking the event schedule. He was waiting for the clock to strike 10:00 p.m. In exactly 3 minutes, the global banking servers in Zurich would open for high-value overnight transfers. The moment I finished my speech, Emily would hand the deed to Julian, who would scan the authorization code and execute the transfer of $30 million out of my reach. I took the microphone. The room fell into a respectful silence. Good evening, everyone, I began, my voice echoing off the gilded walls. 10 years ago, I married Emily. I gave her my name, my trust, and a share of everything I built. I watched her grow from an ambitious girl into a woman who knows exactly how to get what she wants. The crowd chuckled warmly. Emily beamed, offering a modest wave to the cameras. Tonight, we celebrate partnership, I continued, my tone shifting, becoming subtly heavier, colder. We celebrate the choices we make, and the consequences that follow them. Emily has often told me that in finance, timing is everything. You have to know when to invest, when to hold, and when to liquidate your liabilities. Emily's smile tightened slightly. She looked at me, a flicker of confusion crossing her eyes. This wasn't the romantic speech we had rehearsed. I glanced at Julian. He was staring at his phone, his thumb hovering over the screen. It was 9:59 p.m., 1 minute left. So, to my beautiful wife, I raised my glass, looking directly into her eyes, stripping away every ounce of warmth from my gaze. May you get exactly what you deserve tonight. To Emily and Marcus, the crowd cheered, raising their glasses. As the applause swelled, Emily leaned in close to me, her voice a sharp whisper under the noise. Marcus, what was that? You sounded so cold. Just speaking the truth, sweetheart, I whispered back. Behind her, I saw Julian's thumb pressed down hard on his phone screen. His face lit up with a pale blue glow. He looked up at Emily and gave her a subtle, triumphant nod. The transfer was initiated. $30 million was leaving the Vance Financial Vanguard Fund, rushing through encrypted digital pipelines straight into a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands under Julian's name. Emily saw the nod. A wave of pure, intoxicating relief washed over her face. She had done it. She had ruined me. She turned back to me, her mask completely slipping away. There was no love left in her eyes, only the cold, arrogant stare of a predator who had just slain its prey. Thank you for the gift, Marcus. Truly, you have no idea what this means to us. Oh, I think I do, I replied softly, taking a slow sip of my scotch as the heavy ballroom doors at the back of the room suddenly slammed shut. The heavy thud of the oak doors echoed through the grand ballroom, instantly cutting through the applause. The music stopped abruptly, the band freezing mid-note. A tense, suffocating silence dropped over the crowd like a heavy velvet blanket. Emily frowned, her hand still holding the leather folder tight against her chest. What is going on? She muttered, scanning the perimeter of the room. From the shadows of the entrance, 6 men in sharp, identical dark suits stepped into the light. They didn't look like the usual high society guests. Their expressions were carved from stone, and pinned to their lapels were small, gold badges that caught the glare of the chandeliers. FBI. Leading them was Agent Reynolds. He walked with an unmistakable authority, his eyes locked dead on the podium where Emily and I stood. Julian, standing by the stage, panicked. His fingers flew across his phone screen, trying to clear his history, but his hands were shaking so violently that the device slipped from his grip, clattering loudly against the marble floor. Julian? Emily called out, her voice losing its icy composure, replaced by a sudden, sharp spike of anxiety. She looked at him, then down at the phone, then back at me. Marcus, what is this? Who are these people? I didn't answer. I simply stood there, my hands resting casually in my tuxedo pockets, watching her facade crumble piece by piece. Agent Reynolds reached the stage, stepping past the stunned socialites. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his inner pocket and held it up. Emily Vance, Julian Cross, Reynolds' voice boomed through the microphone system, clear and unyielding. I am Agent Reynolds with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. We have a warrant for your immediate arrest on charges of grand larceny, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit international money laundering. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. Flashbulbs began firing like a frenzy of lightning bolts. The paparazzi, sensing the scandal of the century, pushed forward, their lenses capturing every twitch of horror on Emily's face. This is absurd, Emily yelled, her voice cracking as she took a step back, pressing against my shoulder. Marcus, tell them it's a mistake. We just signed the Vanguard transfer. It's legal. It's our company. She reached out to grab my arm, her manicured nails digging through the fabric of my suit. She was looking for a savior. She was looking for the doting, blind husband she thought she had been manipulating for the last 10 years. I slowly turned my head and looked down at her hand on my arm. Then, with deliberate, freezing calm, I reached up, untangled her fingers from my sleeve, and stepped away, leaving her standing entirely alone on the stage. It's not a mistake, Emily, I said softly, the microphone catching my whisper and broadcasting it to every corner of the room. The only mistake here was yours. Her eyes widened, the blue irises shrinking in pure terror as the reality of the situation began to dawn on her. You knew? I always knew, I replied. Julian tried to make a break for the side exit, but 2 federal agents intercepted him before he could even reach the velvet curtains. They slammed him against the wall, pulling his arms behind his back. The sharp click of the steel handcuffs locking around his wrists sounded like a gunshot in the silent room. Emily watched her lover get pinned like a common criminal, the folder slipping from her hands and scattering the signed documents across the floor. She looked at the papers, then up at me, her face pale as a ghost. But you signed it. You gave me the funds. I have the money. No, Emily, I murmured, leaning slightly forward so only she could hear. You have exactly what I wanted you to have. Agent Reynolds stepped onto the stage, the steel handcuffs dangling from his hand. Emily fell to her knees, frantically grabbing at the scattered papers of the Vanguard Fund. She was a drowning woman trying to cling to paper anchors. Marcus, please, she sobbed, looking up at me, tears ruining her perfect makeup. I was confused. Julian manipulated me, he threatened me. You love me, Marcus. You built all of this for us. I built this empire on one rule, Emily, I said, looking down at her without a single ounce of pity. Never invest in a liability, and the moment you brought Julian into my company and into our bed, you became the greatest liability I had. Julian, being dragged past the stage by two agents, spat out in a desperate rage. It doesn't matter, Vance. The transfer cleared. $30 million is already sitting in my Cayman account. Even if we go down, we take your damn company with us. Vance Financial is ruined. I turned my gaze to Julian, letting a slow, cruel smile spread across my face. You really should read the fine print of the assets you steal, Julian, I said, my voice echoing with absolute authority. The Vanguard Fund hasn't held actual client capital in over 18 months. The moment I discovered your little affair and your shell companies, I emptied it. Emily froze, a piece of paper clutched in her trembling hand. What? What do you mean? The $30 million you two just spent the last 6 months trying to steal didn't belong to Vance Financial, I explained, stepping to the edge of the stage so the entire room and every rolling news camera could hear every word. It was a honeypot, a sting operation funded entirely by the FBI to trap international money launderers. I merely volunteered my hollow fund to act as the bait. The color completely drained from Julian's face. He stopped struggling against the agents, his mouth hanging open in sheer horror. Every encrypted line you used, every offshore account you opened, and every digital footprint you left tonight went straight into a federal database. I continued, my voice cold and unyielding. You didn't rob an old man, Julian. You just transferred federal sting money directly into your own name. That isn't grand larceny. That is treason against the United States financial system. Emily looked at the folder in her hands as if it had turned into a venomous snake. She dropped it, screaming as Agent Reynolds stepped forward and pulled her hands behind her back. The cold steel snapped around her wrists. Marcus, no! You can't do this to me, she shrieked as she was forced to her feet. The crowd of New York's elite watched in stunned silence, some recording on their phones, others turning away in disgust. The golden marriage of Wall Street was dead, exposed as nothing more than a brilliantly executed trap. As the agents led them toward the exit, Emily turned back one last time, her eyes wide with a mix of terror and desperate confusion. How long have you been planning this? I picked up my glass of scotch from the podium, took one final sip, and looked her dead in the eye. Since the night you changed your phone password and started smelling like his cologne, I said softly. The heavy doors opened, and Emily and Julian were marched out into the flashing lights of the police cruisers waiting in the New York rain. They were facing 25 years in a federal penitentiary, their names ruined, their lives shattered by their own greed. I walked down from the stage, adjusting my tuxedo cuffs. The orchestra, sensing the tension had passed, tentatively began to play a slow, smooth jazz melody. The guests began to murmur, turning back to their drinks, looking at me with a newfound sense of terrifying respect. I had lost a wife, yes, but I had protected my empire, cleansed my company, and delivered the ultimate lesson to those who mistook my silence for blindness. In the game of high finance, the predator is never the one making the loudest noise. It's the one who